Okay, hello everybody. Very good to see you all in person. Thanks for coming back up on time. My name's Ed Byford. I am the product lead for RabbitMQ and Tanzi RabbitMQ. So my role is really to help the team figure out what to focus on next, what to build next, speaking to customers, speaking to partners, speaking to users, and helping the team figure out the right direction.
And I'm Twine, product manager, also for RabbitMQ, both the open source and the commercial. Every now and again, I get let out the box out into public, and I joined VMware about 5 months ago.
Yeah, and our role today really is to take you through some of the history of RabbitMQ and also really to signpost some of the talks that are coming up, because a lot of important work going on. Our challenge here is to reveal some stuff without giving you too many spoilers. So consider this kind of a trailer for what's coming up today. First off, a little bit of history. So RabbitMQ is actually 15 years old. If we start before then, though, it was a hardware engineer called Vivek Ranadive who came up with the idea for a software bus, which was really based on his idea, or rather the idea of a hardware bus that would share common events from around a motherboard. But it actually wasn't until 2004, 2007 when engineers at JPMC decided to build an open standard for messaging, and that was AMQP. And then, of course, Alexis Richardson and Matthias Raderstock developed the first version of RabbitMQ, building an AMQP layer on top of OTP and Erlang. Then RabbitMQ Technologies was bought by SpringSource, which was a division of VMware in 2010. And then Pivotal Software was spun out from EMC and VMware in 2012. And then, going back, Pivotal was reacquired by VMware. So there's been a bit of a boomerang effect going on with the RabbitMQ product. And I'm happy to say that we're very happy to be here today. And it's endured because of the popularity of RabbitMQ and the rock-solid nature of that. We also have an important milestone, which was that RabbitMQ 3.6.15 was actually released by an actual rabbit. That's Zen, owned by Diana, who's at the back. And we're still going today. The team's actually growing. This is a picture of the team from an offsite we had this week in Sevilla, or most of the team, I should say. We've actually added lots of people. We've got 2 new PMs. We've got a new product designer. We have a technical author. And we've even had additions to the engineering team over the past year. So I'd like to talk a little bit now about the year in review and kind of review from where we were last year to where we are now. And there's been a number of different investment themes over that time, mainly around security, around scalability and performance, and around resiliency. So first thing I want to talk about is some of the performance improvements in RabbitMQ 3.10. And there's multi-dimensional scenarios to these, improved scenarios with one or two queues with very fast publishers and consumers, large numbers of queues with high volumes of messages, and big improvements to quorum queues, and they easily compete with classic mirrored queues now and exceed those expectations. You can listen to Michal and David's talk on RabbitMQ performance later today to learn more. Unfortunately, even RabbitMQ 3.10 can't handle the long queues that are stretching from Westminster Hall today, going back 5 miles, but we'll consider it for the roadmap. There's also been improvements to classic queues. So there's a classic queue version 2 now. It essentially has a new index file format and a new per queue storage file. It basically replaces the embedding of messages in the index. And what does that mean for you? It means much lower latency and much more predictable latency. Quorum queues have had some improvements as well. So you can set TTL for both messages and queues, and this is controlled by some optional queue arguments. There's also been at least once guarantees added to dead lettering for quorum queues. So when you have mission-critical messages that you want to examine if they're undelivered, then that's possible now with quorum queues. In terms of streams, which is the log-like data structure that sits within RabbitMQ, so you can have both message queues and a stream. They now also support replication over TLS based on the internode inter-cluster TLS configuration. And I can also talk about RabbitMQ 3.11, which is very close to being released. So we're really excited to talk about some of the security features. The OAuth 2 plugin now supports any OpenID Connect or OAuth 2 provider, so that greatly broadens the compatibility that you're able to use that with authorization servers. Streams, so I mentioned streams as the log-based data structure. You can now have super streams, and super streams is essentially a logical construction where a logical superstream is made up of a bundle of individual regular streams, but is transparent to the client. So this allows you to do things like partition your stream, splitting up the storage and the traffic between different cluster nodes. And we also have, to go along with that, single active consumer. So this really provides exclusive consumption and consumption continuity for a stream. So you can have a group of consumers, only one of which is active at any one time, in order to guarantee message ordering or processing of those events on that stream. And the coordinator is coordinated with the broker so that the switch between those consuming applications is automatic. And you can learn more about that in Arnaud's talk later today. But we don't only have RabbitMQ in the stable that we're working on. We also have Tanzi RabbitMQ. And for those of you that aren't familiar, Tanzi RabbitMQ is the commercial distribution of RabbitMQ. So it provides enterprise useful and scale useful features on top of the core product. So we have a number of different ways you can deploy it. There's a container image, there's various commercial plugins, and there's a set of Kubernetes operators that does a lot of orchestration automation for you. One of the things we're really excited to talk about was warm standby replication, which was released back in November. And that essentially allows you to set up an active-passive configuration of RabbitMQ. So you'll have a deployment of RabbitMQ running on your active site and deployment running on the passive site. And that warm standby replication will keep the schema, the messages, the message state in sync between those two sites, such that when you fail over and connect your applications to the newly promoted passive site, then you're essentially making sure those applications are only consuming the messages that haven't been processed from active site. So we're really excited about that. We also have a HashiCorp Vault integration. So there's a number of different ways that Vault can integrate on Kubernetes. Essentially, we have an operator that integrates with the Vault agent to allow you to manage users' credentials as well as TLS within Vault. We have a new metrics endpoint on the Prometheus side. So what that means is there's a lot of detail coming out of the Prometheus metrics. What you can do is filter those metrics so that you can see what you're interested in and just make sure that you're focusing in on sort of app-level concerns. There's also a couple of extra pre-configured Prometheus alerts that come with that. And more recently, Tanzi RabbitMQ 1.3, we essentially expand the scope of responsibility for those Kubernetes operators. So previously, it was just the deployments managed by the cluster operator that would allow you to do things like expose the messaging topology as Kubernetes objects and handle warm standby replication. But what you can now do with those operators is take deployments that you already have running and bring them within the scope of those so that they can be controlled by those operators. So grab all of the things. I'll hand over to Howard now, some of the future.
Thank you. For obvious reasons, we can't share with you what our plans are for the commercial offering, but I can at least provide you with an insight as to what we're doing with the open source. As you can see, top of the list there, MQTT5. AMQP remains the core protocol for Rabbit. But there are some opportunities out there that require greater protocol versatility, and this edition obviously adds to that. MQTT5, or MQTT in general, offers better performance of large-scale connections, large-scale systems with thousands, even potentially millions of connected devices. MQTT5 in particular does offer some better error reporting with reason codes published and notifications of server disconnects. There are common patterns added to the protocol, baked in to the protocol, and there's some extensibility with custom priorities in MQTT5. And as Ed has covered with previous releases, there's been a fair amount of effort and a trend within the team of improving scalability and performance. That continues. We're building on the core work that's currently being done with Capri right now. We've got some exciting plans for future performance enhancements with RabbitMQ. And certainly, if you'd like to know more detail about that, Michael and Deanna's session later on today is well worth popping into. We've also done some recent research internally as a sort of an experiment, and we've kind of got a feeling that we can get memory usage down to around about, well, reduced by about 60 to 90% in certain configurations of Rabbit. So watch this space for updates on that progress. And the theme of observability continues as well, with tracing being added via OpenTelemetry for our Kubernetes operators. Ed, back to you.
Yep, thanks, Howard. So you can come chat to us. We're going to be talking again at the Meet the Sponsors session, which is over lunch, but we'll be scarfing down sandwiches as we go. Apologies for that. We have a booth downstairs. It's in the corner down here, so you can come and meet the team. We've got some goodies to give you away. We've got socks, we've got badges, we've got stickers, and various other things. So come grab some of those. That'd be great. You can email us. The emails are on the screen. Contact us via LinkedIn. Hit us up on Twitter as well. And just before we open for questions, I just want to say thank you to everybody in the community. What's really good about being part of an open source project and something that's so vibrant like RabbitMQ is we're constantly taking contributions and having great discussions with customers, developers, users, and that's really, really nice to see. So thank you all very much for being here, and thank you for participating, and yeah, we'll take any questions now.
Okay, so we have one question from our virtual participants. Alexander, can you unmute yourself and ask Ed and Howard a question, please?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. So for our infrastructure, we really heavily rely on Terraform, and we also use a Terraform provider for RabbitMQ, but it's not really an official one. Updates are kind of slow, and I was just asking myself if it's ever plans to have an official provider for Terraform.
That's not something we have plans for today. So I know that there are a lot of people using Terraform with RabbitMQ, and that does work, but there isn't an official plan to do that yet.
Thanks.
Thanks for your question. Anyone from the audience? Hold on.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So my question is about federation and shovels for streams. So is there any plan to have like a federation or a shovel that is using the native protocol, and that it remembers the offset, so when it goes down and it reconnects, it keeps going where it was? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So there is a plan. We are looking into it. Essentially, we're using it already within some areas of the product. So we're using it internally for some of our commercial features. The idea is at the moment it's not exposed. It's only exposed for those quorum queues, but we will plan to use that and add that in the future for streams.
Thank you.
Thanks. A question on OpenID Connect. Would it be possible to use OS2 authentication with plugins like Shovel, Federation, and use for essentially for everything for connecting outside?
Yes, so the OAuth2 backend is for authorizing all sorts of users into RabbitMQ. So that's the management plugin, that's other plugins, and all of the connections to queues as well.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Give a round of applause for
Thank you. Thanks.